Hi, my name is Drew Roy, and this is my author presentation on Edgar Allan Poe. It's a picture of him in the bottom right with his signature. Who was Edgar Allan Poe? Edgar Allan Poe was a famous early 19th century American writer. He wrote poems, approximately 50, short stories, approximately 70, and one novel. He was best known for his Gothic horror style writing. Examples of this include the poem The Raven and the short story The Fall of the House of Usher. He's also an innovative writer. He wrote America's first detective and science fiction short stories. Both genres have become very popular in American culture. To the right is a cover of the book The Fall of the House of Usher. It has a little creepy house in the background. Thought that was cool. Some biographical highlights. Edgar Allan Poe was born on January 19th, 1809 in Boston, Massachusetts, and his date of death is October 7th, 1849 in Baltimore, Maryland. Some important life events include when his dad left the family when he was an infant, and his mom died of tuberculosis when he was 3. So he was raised by John and Frances Allen in Richmond, Virginia. They adopted him. And he was a prolific poet by age 13. At age 17, he attended the University of Virginia for less than a year and dropped out due to financial reasons, gambling debts, and excessive alcohol use. Age 18, he joined the army and published his first book, Tamerlane and Other Poems. At age 20, he published his second book, All or Farf, Tamerlane and Minor Poems. And age 21, he admitted and attended West Point for less than a year until he was expelled for discipline reasons. Age 22, he published his third book, Poems. Ages 22 through 25, he lived in Baltimore, published numerous short stories that were posted in newspapers. In 1833, he published a prize-winning short story, MS, Found in the Bottle. His most famous short story published during this time was The Visionary in 1834. Published the first modern-day science fiction story, Hans Befall, in 1835. Ages 25 to 27, he lived in Richmond and became an editorial assistant at the magazine Southern Literacy Messenger, where he spent time writing stories, poems, and served as a writing critic, where he gained the nickname Tomahawk Man for his very critical reviews. He was later fired from the job due to excessive alcohol use. At age 26, he married his 13-year-old cousin, and they stayed married for 11 years until she died in 1847. Page 2 of the biographical highlights. Ages 28 through 34, he lived in Philadelphia and continued to publish short stories and poems in various newspapers and magazines. In 1839, he became a co-editor of Burton's Gentleman's Magazine, where he wrote and published reviews, short stories, and poems to include the short stories The Fall of the House of Usher and William Wilson. He was fired in 1840 for excessive drinking. Later on in 1840, he became co-editor of Graham's Magazine, where he wrote short stories to include The Murders in the Rue Morgue, which became the first modern detective fiction story. He had a dispute with the owner of the magazine and was fired in 1842. Later in 1842, he published short stories The Pit and the Pendulum, The Mask of the Red Death, and The Mystery of Marie Roget. Then in 1843, he published the short stories The Telltale Heart, The Gold Bug, and The Black Cat. Age 29, he published the first novel, The Narrative of Author Gordon Pym, P-Y-M. Ages 34 to 36, he lived in New York City and worked as an editor for the New York Evening Mirror and published the poem The Raven in 1845. From ages 37 to 40, he lived in Fordham, New York, and published short stories such as The Cast of the Amontillado and poems such as Ullalume, and The Bells. Age 40, after 2 years of severe alcohol use, he died. Cooping. Cooping is where a person is intoxicated, taken hostage, and forced to vote numerous times while changing clothes each time. This may have caused his death. Writing career highlights, publications, and other milestones. Some of Poe's famous poems, out of around 50 that he wrote, include The Raven, Ulalume, and To Helen. Some of Poe's famous short stories, out of the 70 he wrote, include The Raven, The Fall of the House of Usher, The Black Cat, and The Telltale Heart. Some of Poe's innovative writings, his first modern-day science fiction story, Hans Befall, was written in 1835, and the first modern-day detective fiction story, The Murders in the Rue Morgue, in 1840. To the right, there's a picture of Edgar Allan Poe with some creepy images around him. Images from his short stories and poems, The Raven, The Black Heart, and The Black Cat. Influences on the author's work. What influenced Poe's writings? He's influenced by his lifetime experiences. His life was very depressing. He was an orphan. Most of his family died around him. He lived poor for long spells. He was an alcoholic, and he lived in a wide variety of places. Poe is influenced in his writings by English playwright and poet William Shakespeare, which is pictured on the left, and English romantics such as Lord Byron, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and John Keats, and John Keats is pictured on the right. The author's impact. The author's impact on literature. He invented the detective story and shaped the modern science fiction genre, as I've explained before, and developed the short story genre of psychological terror. He advocated for art's sake at a time when most critics believed art existed to instruct, edify, or propagandize. Writers inspired by Poe. Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes, Stephen King, Jules Verne, George Bernard Shaw, H.G. Wells, and the poet W.H. Auden. Author's continued relevance. His works are taught in most high schools and colleges, and his works have inspired some films, music, and TV shows to include The Simpsons' Treehouse of Horror episode, which is pictured on the right at the top, featuring Bart as the Raven, tormenting Homer into a crazed, paranoid lunatic. And at the top on the left is a book by Jules Verne, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. This is my works cited page. Thank you for your attention, and have a good day.